Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Maaseh Sheni, Perek Dalid, Halachet Dalid. We're learning today Daf Mem, and we're starting on Daf Mem all the way on top of the Amid with the Gemara. Now, the whole Mishnah's first case was based on a premise, which is that when another buys my Maaseh Sheni, which is allowed, even though the first Mishnah says you're not allowed to sell Meiser Sheni, we explained that when we opened the Masechta. That means that I am not allowed to sell Meiser Sheni without a pidyon, which means that one without this rule would have said, I have Meiser Sheni that has to be eaten in Yerushalmi. Let me sell it, and whoever buys it will pay a discounted price, but the buyer will have to take it to Yerushalmi. That is not something that's allowed. But if the person buying the Meiser Sheni, together with the buying of it, will deconsecrate it, will redeem it, just like I, the owner, can make a declaration that the Kedusha of the food should go into the money, so can you, which is taka why we learned that if you offer more money principal than me, I say I'm going to give a seller and you're going to give a seller and an iser, the Mishnah ruled that the other person gets to buy it. But what happens when they buy it is that, first of all, they own it. Second of all, the money that they pay for it now becomes imbued with the sanctity of Meiser Sheni, which means that the seller who had produce that needed to be taken to Yerushalayim ends up with money that he has to take to Yerushalayim, and the buyer ends up with unconsecrated produce. So every sale of Meiser Sheni has the sale part and it has the pidyon part. Aviv, yeah, I'm reviewing. This is the Iker. However, this is the premise of the Mishnah. When it comes to a sale, as we learned the whole sugya, Rabbi Yechanan, Reish Lakish, bottom line, Meshicha will be the act that will put into effect the acquisition. The kinyan happens during Meshicha. Now, make no mistake, for a sale to happen, there has to be an agreement as to how much money will be paid. And the moment Meshicha is made by the buyer, even though the buyer did not give, what do they call that, a red nickel, Indian penny, whatever the expression, doesn't matter. The buyer owns the produce and he owes the money. How much money? The money that they agreed upon. When does the pidyon happen? That's the premise of the Mishnah. It happens when there is an exchange of money, which could happen that day. It can happen in a month. It doesn't have to happen at the same time. Now, when does the deconsecration happen? When the money is given. Therefore, it could be that there's going to be a price fluctuation in between the Meshicha and the giving of the money. And the example the Mishnah gave, even though it's an exaggerated example, inflation 100%, but let's go with that. That when the Mishnah gave both sides, the Gemara today will begin on the first side, and that is that the buyer agreed to pay a seller. He made Meshicha, which means he owes one seller, but when he came to pay, at that time, the produce is worth 2 saloim. Now, hold on. B'negeya, the kinyan, he has to give only one seller. But there's a problem. Because when he gives the money, he's also affecting a pidyon. For a pidyon to happen, you have to have shava b'shava. That's the whole sugya. Certainly, bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim. So him only giving a seller is not enough. He has to give another seller in order for him to be able to deconsecrate the kedusha that's currently invested in produce that's currently worth 2 saloim, it has to go into 2 saloim. So the Mishnah said that the second seller, the buyer has to designate the second seller, but the buyer gets to keep it. That was the opening line. It makes a lot of sense. In other words, why would he have to pay it? Yes, there has to be a second seller here that will that will absorb the kedusha of Meiser Sheni for the produce to become deconsecrated. So now the buyer owns produce. He only paid one seller. It's worth 2. He also will own his own seller that is his, but he has to take to Yerushalmi. So this premise that the pidyon doesn't happen at the time of the kinyan, because kinyan comes from Mashiach. the pidyon only happens when the money is being paid, that is something that the Gemara will begin, is not all Tanoim agree to it. And some Tanoim argue with the premise, which will facilitate, because if the pidyon happens during the kinyan, even though the money is not on the table, it doesn't matter. By the way, the money never has to be on the table. When I redeem it on my own money, I can make a declaration. May the kedusha of this Ma'aser Sheni go into the money that's in my drawer. I can say that, and it is effective. This is very important. Elamai, by the sale, the Mishnah holds otherwise. The pidyon happens only when the money is there and the money is going to be used for the purchase. If we don't subscribe to that, then when the kinyan happens, the pidyon happens, and there's no issue with price fluctuations up, nor price fluctuations down. Now, the Gemara is going to wonder, in the case that we just mentioned, this is going to be fascinating. Okay, so now the buyer is designating a second seller to affect half of the pidyon. At this moment, the buyer owns the produce. He already bought it by the Mashiach. The buyer is giving his seller that he'll also keep. What did we learn? That when the owner of both the produce and the money are making the redemption, there you have to pay a chaimish. So now the question will be, does the buyer have to add a chaimish on the second seller? On the first seller, of course not. That's going to be a machlokes that we'll have in the Gemara. That will be the first part of today's daf. Second part of today's daf will focus on the second part of the Mishnah. Second part of the Mishnah is based on a premise that no one argues with, which is that lechatchila, when the pidyon is happening, whether it's happening by the same person, whether it's happening because a sale is happening, lechatchila, one should articulate verbally that I am doing a pidyon, or this money is for its pidyon. That's lechatchila. Question is, what happens if someone did not make such a verbal declaration? That's the meaning of hapoidesh ma'aser sheni v'loy kar Hashem. So we have a machlokes, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. That's the order in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi holds b'diavad dayoy. It's enough. You should have said it, but if you didn't say it, and it's evident that this is your intent, that is enough to affect the redemption, deconsecration redemption. And the Tana, Rabbi Yehuda, says tzarech lefarish. And then the Mishnah went that the same Tanoim argue in a complete different area, but they argue the same argument, and that is that when it comes to both giving a get, where ideally when the man places the get or drops the get in the hands of the woman, he should tell her verbally, Harei ze gitech. What happens if he did not make that declaration? Or when a man is affecting Kiddushin, today, right, we do it with Minig Yisrael with the ring, so the man says to the wife-to-be, Harei mikodeshetli. What happens if he did not say a word? Now, how do you know that he's doing it l'shem kedushin? First of all, circumstantial evidence. The case the Mishnah gives is that they were talking about it. It doesn't even have to be a dafka under the chuppah. If a man is telling a woman, let's get married, she agrees to get married, and they say, let's call Adam, and you be the Adam for the kedushin. The Adam also have to see. And then the man gives her a ring and he doesn't say anything. Or let me go better, it can happen under a chuppah, people, the Masada kedushin, skipped a step. It can happen. You can make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes in the crowd, someone catches the mistake. Sometimes people don't catch it. Like what would happen? A man gives a ring. Everything was done. Eidim are called, but he didn't say hadayat. That's again machlokes. Rabbi Yossi says it's good. They are asukin ba'oisa inyan. So it's self-understood by kedushin, and by kedushin it's edei kiyum. You have to have the edim. Edem Mesida are also, it's not just birur, but they understand why the man is giving it to her. You're kidding today to write a get, it's a whole mice. It always was in front of him. It takes 3 hours for the whole thing to happen. So there's so much clarity prior to giving it. If he doesn't give it, there are sukan ba'isa inyan. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda oimer tzarech lefarish. That's when you learn the Mishnah. Comes the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to really qualify the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. This is going to be very important. There will be times the Gemara is going to insist that Rabbi Yehuda will agree with Rabbi Yossi. It's not that it never will be good. As we'll see, as the Gemara will limit where Rabbi Yehuda says that Sarich lefarish. The final part of today's daf that we won't go until the end, that we'll continue tomorrow, is that we're going to bring in a whole different topic, a machloikas from later Tanoim, Rabbi and Rab Nosson. Rabbi and Rab Nosson are in the generation after Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. And it's late. They have a machloikas. Their machloikas appears to be the same machloikas. It appears that Rabbi is saying, like Rabbi Yossi, that you don't have to specify your intention when it could be deducted or deduced from your previous conversation. That is what Rebbe says. Rab Nosson, I'll give the example. There's a shliach LaKabbalah, shliach LaHalacha. We'll get there. It's a simple case. Rab Nosson appears to be saying, mamish what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, that even if you can deduce what the intent is, nevertheless, not enough. That if you want for something to happen halachically, you have to clearly, verbally say, what is it that you want to happen? Now, normally, big deal. Like in many times, one Tana holds like the other Tana. In this sugya in the Yerushalmi, we're going to be learning Pshat and the Gemara, that the Gemara will not like the fact that Tanoim of a later generation are simply rehashing the same argument of the prior generation, because there's no need for that. If anything, Rebbe can say, I hold like Rabbi Yossi on our Mishnah, and then we would on our own apply it in all of the other cases, as we'll see. And the same thing is Rab Nosson can come and say that I hold like Rabbi Yehuda. So we won't be happy with that they appear to be saying the same thing, and that's more or less where we will end today, and tomorrow we're going to go and give the answer. Okay, Chavra Daf Mem, all the way on top. It's a few minutes late, but it's a very short daf, and we explained it. So again, the premise of the Mishnah, that since there could be a price fluctuation, the Mishnah has to speak out both sides. What happens if the value of the produce went up? What happens if the value of the produce went down? All of that is based on the premise that the kinyan who owns happens by Mashiach. But the pidyon, even if verbally articulated, does not happen by the Mashiach. It happens when money is given. And therefore, it's possible that if you don't give the money today, you can give the money tomorrow, and you should. Well, between today and tomorrow, there could be a price fluctuation. Says the Gemara, our Mishnah, Deloi Kerabon Shimon ben Gamliel. Where do we have Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? In a Braisa. The beauty is regarding this, that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel oimer, lo oilam mishichasoi shal ma'aser sheni hi pidyoinoi. You don't need for money to exchange hands. You don't even have to select the coins that you will pay. You don't need to do that. Whenever a sale is happening, if I buy something from you and I make Mashiach and you sold it because I agreed to pay you, so there is money. Which money? Even if I don't know which money, not the money in that drawer. I am able, through the sale, to also ideally verbally say that the money that I will be paying to you will now become imbued with the mois, with the kedusha of my, and therefore again, there's going to be there will never be a price fluctuation issue. Okay, now first case of our Mishnah doesn't hold like Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Everyone else, or almost everyone else, will hold that it differs. Kinyan, Meshicha, Pidyon, Kesef. So the first case of the Mishnah Viv was that when the Meshicha happened, the produce was worth a selah. When the person actually, let me go back to my case in the intro. I own the produce, Maisa Sheni. You, Aviv, you're buying it. You agreed to pay me a selah. You already did Meshicha. Now, don't forget, according to our Mishnah, you have the produce in your possession. It's still Maisa Sheni produce. You cannot eat it. We're outside Yerushalmi. Tomorrow, when you give me the money, boom, the fruit went up. So the Mishnah was Machadesh. First of all, you only owe me a selah. You will never owe me more than a selah. If the value went up, who benefited? The buyer. That's life. You buy something. Here in LA, you buy real estate. Here it only goes up. So that's it. In Florida, it goes up, it goes down. In LA, goes up. So you buy something, it went up, the buyer benefited. You with me? So you only owe a seller, but what value did you get for it? 2 seller. But there's an issue. Since the pidyon didn't happen, the pidyon needs to have equal value. You can't take right now produce that has the value of 2 seller, holiness in 2 seller, and deconsecrate it only on 1 seller. So you, Aviv, you'll have to pull out of your pocket 2 saloim. How much do you owe me? 1. The one. So you say that the kedusha of the Ma'aser Sheni goes on both of these saloim. You take one of those and you give it to me, which is fair because I knew that I'm giving you the produce. I'm getting money, but I knew the money that I'm getting will have kedushas Ma'aser Sheni. That means I can't just buy a coat with it. I have to take it to Yerushalmi and buy food with it. The second seller you own, you keep, but it has in it the kedusha of Ma'aser Sheni. You good? I'm the Gemara and asking, do you have to add a chaimish on the second seller? And you would say, yeah, of course. It will be a chiddush to say not. Why, of course? Because when the pidyon is happening, which is a day after the sale, at the moment of the pidyon, who owns the produce? You. Who owns the money upon which you are deconsecrating the produce? You. What did we learn last week? That when the owner is the owner both of the produce and of the money, that is where you have to add a halachic fifth. Or in English, 25%. We know a fifth is 20%, but that's the way it works. Huh? It's not a penalty, but that's what it says in the Torah. So now says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi, B'Shem Rebbe Lazar, even though the second seller will belong to the buyer, even though the buyer at the time of the deconsecration owns already the produce, l'cha'ira, you own the produce, you own the money. The first seller you don't own because you have to give it. It's owed. But the second seller you're keeping. So nevertheless, ein moisifin chaimish ala selah hashniya. That is what Rabbi Yosi said. The Amoira. Rabbi Yosi b'shem Rabbi Lazar. The Amoira. When he said it, v'hoya Rabbi Ze'eda mistakel bei. Rabbi Ze'eda was staring him down, and it was a look through which he was saying, "Why? Why would you not have to pay?" And Rabbi Yosi pushed back. So Amar Lei, so Rabbi Yosi tells Rabbi Ze'eda, "Ma'at mistakel bei. Why are you staring at me? Or you think I'm the only one that holds like that? Rabbi Lazar is the only one that holds like that. Af Rabbi Hila moideba. And where did Rabbi Hila get it from? From Rabbi Yechanan. And that is Ka'ai, the Amar Rabbi Yechanan, which is Kol Ma'aser Sheni she'ein hu upidyoinoi mishaloi einoi ma'aser chaimish. Now I know we learned these words last week, but the vart is that since the buyer became committed to redeem his Ma'aser Sheni produce because of the purchase, the buyer became committed to redeem. Why is he redeeming it? Where did it come from? It didn't come from his owning it. It came from his buying it. So even though he's redeeming it when he already owns it, he doesn't have to pay a chaimish. Let me add more words to that. Let me ask you a bigger question. Not according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. I think that's why the Gemara made that behemshach. Aviv, think. I own the produce. I sold it to you. What are we saying? That when you make Meshicha, you own it before you paid me. Forget about the second seller. What about the first seller? What do you have to do now? You have to pay me a seller. What do you do when you pay me a seller? You declare, Aviv, you declare that the kedusha of the Ma'aser Sheni of the produce goes onto the money. Why don't you have to pay a chaimish? Even on the first seller. And the answer is because even though at the moment of the pidyon, at this moment you own both the produce and the money, doesn't matter. But why are you making the pidyon? Because you bought it. So if the one who is making the pidyon, if the chiyuv of the pidyon was instigated because of a purchase, that's the meaning it didn't belong to you. And oy bazoi makes no difference, the first seller. Even though you keep the second seller, same logic, why are you making the pidyon? You, Aviv. Why not me? Because you bought it. So anytime a pidyon is aroused because of a purchase, that's the meaning that it's not both yours. Even though chronologically, after you bought it, you own it before you made the pidyon. That's an anish. Now, I'm not saying that Rab Ze'eda agreed. I'm just saying that there's a machlokes hamoraim. He just backed himself up with Rav Hila, with Rabbi Yechanan. Okay.
Rabbi, just to be clear, in this situation, the seller who's getting the money, that money is imbued with Meiser Sheni sanctity.
Once the
right?
seller gets it, it's already imbued, Danny, because the buyer is the one that makes the declaration. Yes.
Got it. But he's giving it to the original seller.
Because he's chayiv to give it. And the seller knew that what he's getting is limited money. You know why? Because the produce that he had was also limited, meaning you can't do whatever you want with it. You can't eat the produce wherever you want. You can't use the money wherever you want. You can't use it for whatever you want. It's Meiser Sheni.
But once the exchange happens, now the produce is regular chulin.
Once
and he can
I'll
do
go more, even before Aviv gives me the money, since he designated the money and he made the declaration, I think even before he gave it to me. Yeah. Okay. And now, again, if he didn't make the statement that I am now deconsecrating it on this money, so again, Machloikis, Rabbi Yosi, and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara skips Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi says Dayoi. Dayoi is like b'diavad good. That's the meaning of Dayoi. That means it's good enough. And Rabbi Yehuda, no. Even b'diavad tzarich lefarish. And then the Mishnah went the same by Gitin and the same by Kedushin. If you didn't say the words, according, guys, remember, let's review. Rabbi Yosi says it's enough. Rabbi Yosi allows for a certain halachic status to change because of it being self-evident that this was the intention. Rabbi Yehuda, different ways of understanding the Lamdis, says you have to say for something to go into effect. Just intention is not enough, which fits with Yiddishkeit. Even though many things need both action and intention, but it needs both. Okay. So now, first of all, the Mishnah didn't spell out what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. The Gemara is going to spell out what we already said. That ze gitech, or ze kiddushech, or in our case, ze pidyon meiser sheni. It's interesting. You see, what do we say today? What did I say under the chuppah? Rei at mikodesh li b'taganza whole Megillah. What is he saying? Ze kedushech. In other words, I'm sure that in the times of Chazal, they said the same expression. Harei at mikodesh li kedas Moshe v'Yisrael was said in the times of Moshe. But if he didn't say that, he said ze kedushech, that's good enough, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. At least you have to say what it is. If you don't even say that, it's not good. Now, it's a Chumash Rashi. You learn Chumash, like I said, but you learn the oral Torah. Everything is yotzei midei pshutai. V'haraya, all of the goyim, they read the same Chumash, they have a whole different understanding. And what even for the pshuta, you need to have an oral tradition. The Mishnah is the same thing. You read a Mishnah without the Gemara, you don't understand the Mishnah, even though you thought you understood the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Rab Ze'era, and this is in the name of Chia Barbun, in the name of Abba Bar Tachlifa, in the name of Hoshaya, the oral tradition. He was Mekabel. Ma Pligin, where do they argue? Listen to this. Only Kishehifligu Daton Le'inyonois Achedim. Let me go to the case of the Kedushin, and the same thing will go to everything else. They're speaking about getting married. They were speaking directly, and he's telling her, I am going to give you Kedushin. He's saying what he's going to do. Prior to giving it, he's no longer directly talking about it. I just want to say that Inyanim Achedim, just to make it clear, again, where do I get this from? It's not in the Gemara, from the Noise Kalim. Inyanim Achedim doesn't mean he spoke about sports. Lav Dafka, Rabbi Yosi would agree it's enough. Inyanim Achedim would mean, the examples they give is that he went to speak about a dowry. Now, a dowry is something that a man hopes to get when he gets married from the tzadakala. So it's about marriage, but it's not about, I am now going to consecrate you. You got that? So let me make it clear. If they're talking about marriage and then they speak about a whole different topic, and then the man gives her a ring without saying anything, even Rabbi Yosi will hold she's not Mikodeshes, or maybe misafik. She's not Mikodesh. Dayoy is, the chiddush of the Gemara is even Rabbi Yehuda that says tzarich lefarish. That's only because they spoke about other topics which are still related to marriage or to divorce or to pidyon, but not direct. Like by kiddushin, they spoke about a dowry. By a divorce, they began to speak about the custody. They're speaking about inyanim that happen, God forbid, if there's a divorce.
Can I ask you a question on that?
It's big. Let me just finish the words. If they never stop talking about this itself, I'm going to give you a kiddushin and let you know we need Eidim. You call Eidim. Mamash, what I'm saying. And he can ask her, is this okay for your kiddushin? He asked her. He asked the Eidim, is it worth a pruta? Someone asked him, did you buy it with your money? Everything was done. They're speaking about Kedushin. And then when he puts the ring on her, he doesn't say a peep. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a Kedushin. It's only because they went to speak about still inyane marriage, but not directly about Kedushin. That is where Rabbi Yehuda says Tzarich lefarish. Yeah, what's your question, Danny?
I don't understand how Kedushin and Gittin run on the same track here. Like Gittin, I'm giving a parsha here that is a divorce document. I handed it to someone, they take it.
In other words, it's not even though God
Kedushin, I'm giving a gift or an item that has value. So you could say I gave it for something or she received it for something. How works. How do you apply that to Gittin? Why else is the guy handing his wife a because the giving the get is what severs the connection.
Giving the money. Why else is he giving it to her? Maybe he's asking her to hold on to it to threaten her. Listen here, hold on to the document. When I'm going to decide to do it, you already have it. I'm going to say, boom, into effect. I don't know. Look, but I want to read inside the last Maraf folder before we turn to Amid Beis. Everyone says the same thing. If they change topics, they diverted the topic, doesn't mean they diverted it completely. But you see the marafulda, because if they completely change the topic, even according to Rabbi Yossi, we wouldn't say dayo. How do you know? Okay, daf mem amid base. Let's get going. So we have enough time. Good. Let me say the following: Bekitzer, shliach lohilacha, shliach lekabala. There are two types of shluchim. Really, there's three types of shluchim, but let's speak about the two that are nagir right now. There's a shliach that a man could appoint and send a get to his wife through the shliach that is representing him. In such a case, when the man puts the get in the hand of the shliach, is she divorced? No, because the shliach is his extended hand. If he's holding on to the get, she's not divorced. She's divorced when she receives it. But if she sends a shliach to receive the get, and the man, the husband, places the get in the hand of her shliach that she sent to receive it, even though she did not receive it, since the shliach is representing her, she's divorced at that moment. And by the way, if the shliach lohilacha puts it in the hand of the shliach lekabala, same din. In other words, when the shliach lekabala accepts the get, she becomes divorced and you can no longer retract. Now, what happens if she sends a shliach lekabala and the man, maybe because he wants to leave for himself the opening for the next, let's say she lives a day travel between her and the shliach. Maybe he wants to still leave it open. And don't forget that if she did not yet receive it, if the shliach is a shliach lehoilacha, he can undo the shlichus. He can say, I nullify that guy of being my shliach, and then she will not be divorced. You with me? She sends a shliach lekabala, and he explicitly says, I am not giving it to you as her shliach lekabala. I'm not accepting you on that way. I am appointing you as my shliach lehoilacha. The rule is he has such a prerogative. He has the koyach halachically to do it. Notice one might have said, can't do that. She already appointed him. Either give it or don't give it. We don't say that. What I'm saying right now, everyone agrees to. He can say, I am not giving it to you as her shliach. I'm not doing it. I am giving it to you as my shliach l'haylach. And if he makes such a clear statement, then the shliach is only a shliach l'haylach. Where are we going to have a machlokes Rebbe and Abnasan if he made a statement that's not clear whether he's nullifying or not accepting the shliach as her shliach like Kabbalah? He's keilu reappointing him as his shliach, a shliach like Kabbalah, making him into a shliach l'haylach. If it's vague, there's asukin ba'oso inyan, but it wasn't clear. We're going to have a machlokes tanoim that we're going to initially correlate to our machlokes, where things were not very clearly spelled out. But just to understand the flow of the Gemara will be, all of this is a problem. The problem will be, is that if indeed that will be the pshat, that Rebbe says he doesn't have to specify so clearly that you're not a shliach like Kabbalah, I'm making you a shliach l'haylach. It's enough the context. Sounds like Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yossi, Dayoy. They were, according to Rab Nassan, who says, no, it has to be befedish, you are not this, you are this. Sounds like he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. It's just going to be presented in our Gemara as a problem. Why did the later generation Amoraim have to argue? We already argued that. Let Rebbe go ahead and say regarding this case that I hold like Rabbi Yossi. That is the premise of the Gemara as a kasha. So let's read it inside. Rab Chagai, that was Rab Chagai's kasha. Rab Chagai bo'o kum Rabbi Yossi. Now, I just want to make it clear, Rabbi Yossi is not the Tana. Don't confuse. Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi, even though the Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael had smicha, so they were also called Rabbi. In Babli, it's much easier. Generally, Amoraim in Babel did not get smicha, because smicha has to be given in the Holy Land. So they're called Rav Yossi, if anything, right? Rav himself, Shmuel, had no Rav Bechlal. But anyways, this is Rabbi Yossi da Amoira. So Rab Chagai asked in front of Rabbi Yossi, Akasha, isn't Rebbe simply paskening like Rabbi Yossi? Isn't Reb Nassan paskening like Rabbi Yehuda? Like we spoke out, and now we're going to read inside parts of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is a Masechtas Git. The Tanin and Taman, we learned over there different ways, different girsa'os, that if the husband meeting the Shliach LeKabbalah tells the Shliach LeKabbalah explicitly, I don't accept you as her Shliach LeKabbalah. I am sending it to you for you to take it to her. That means he says, you're not a Shliach LeKabbalah, you're my Shliach L'Haylacha. There, the Mishnah says, since that for sure, clearly, took away that Shliach's koyach of representing her, because he's not agreeing to it. He did not give it to the Shliach as her representative. He gave it to the Shliach as his representative. When a man puts the get in the hand of the Shliach L'Haylacha, she's not divorced yet. So he can still nullify. He can nullify the Shlichus, he can nullify the get. There are different mediums. Or even better, he can send someone else to stop the Shliach. Point is, she is not divorced. He's able still to stop the get because the get was not given. That's clear. However, here comes the area where it's not explicit, it's implied, it's understood, but it's not befedish. Tzarech lefarish. There's no befedish, which is Ella. One second. I'm sorry. It's still in the first case. If he tells her, but what do I want? Ella. Let's go with the version. Hoylech v'tenla. Not Kabbalah, yes, hoylacha. So that's Vadai Imratza Lahachse Yachse. The Shliach, began as a Shliach like Kabbalah. Yes, he did. But since the husband said before giving the get to this man, you're not a Shliach like Kabbalah. I don't want you to be. I'm not giving it to you as a Shliach like Kabbalah. I don't accept that. I'm giving it to you as my Shliach L'Haylacha. The husband has the power through that clear statement to change the status of the Shliach. Aber that's in the Mishnah. That's the end of the Mishnah. Oh, now comes the Brais. So now this is all Rab Chagai's kasha. Masnisa, the Mishnah that says that the husband has to say, don't efsher Kabbalah. Yes, hoylacha, as we'll see, this Masnisa the Rebbe. Only Rebbe agrees to that. Rab Nassan does not agree to that. The Tani we learned in a Braisa. Here we go. Amra, if the man says I'm sorry. Amrav, she says to a shliach, hiskaba ligiti. And now v'holach v'amar loi. And now the shliach comes to the husband and tells him clearly, Ishtacha Amra, your wife, about ex-wife, but your wife so far, told me, Hiskaba li giti, accept my get for me. He's saying what he is. And the husband does not tell him, he didn't say that. What did he say? He said, take it to her. Now, take it to her also means something, because if that man is a shliach like Kabbalah, does he actually have to take it to her, Aviv? No, because the moment he put it in his hand, she's divorced. So that implies. But he didn't say, I don't want you to be this. He just said, take it to her. Or teneyula, give it to her. Or zechela, acquire it for her. Or even if he said, he's kabbalah, accept it for her. Even by his kabbalah, accept it for her. It was like almost not needed. What are you saying?
So what is he supposed to say?
We'll see in a moment. First of all, he doesn't have to say. According
to Reb Nosson.
First of all, did Rabbi.
It's not his get. It's not his get because he's not the woman.
Let's go read. I'll get the answer in a moment. So im rotza lahachzer lo yachzer. Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda, we said. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? It has to be befedish. He did not befedish nullify the shlichus. He did not do that. So therefore, you could squeeze into his words, say that. Accept it for her. Okay, take it to her. Give it to her. Acquire it to her. Skabila. Bottom line is, that was not enough for him to nullify the get. Now, the Braisa is not arguing in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if the husband says, I don't want, you undid the old, then you can make something new. Rabbi holds that if you don't do that, even if you said, Hoy lichala, I think it's the biggest, Hoy lichala is Lashon Shliach Lahilacha. It doesn't matter. Could be practically, go bring it. You want to receive it on her behalf, go take it to her. So Divrei Rabbi, that shliach remains a shliach like Kabbalah, therefore she's divorced. Rab Nosson Omer, it depends what words. By the words hoilichila, or by the words teneula, Rab Nosson does not argue by the words zechela, doesn't argue with the words is Kabbalah. But if the words were hoilichila, take it to her. If the words were Teneula, Rab Nosson holds that what? Imrotza lahachzer yachzer, he can still retract. It's only Zechela v'yiskabila, Imrotza lahachzer lo yachzer. And again, Rabbi, there's a back and forth. Rabbi holds that he can never retract. He can never retract. Rabbi Yomer, b'kulam lo yachzer. Why? Because she came as a shliach lekabbalah. Rabbi agrees with the Mishnah. Ella, not Ella. The kulam la yachzer ad sheyoymaloi ef shishitiskabiloi. I don't want you to be the shliach like Kabbalah. Ella shotelichilam. Now says the Gemara, why are we connecting that to this? But let's think. We spoke it out. The Gemara speaks it out. Vekashi ad Rebbe. Why? When he says hoylech. Still, imrotza lahachzer lo yachzer. Why would Rabbi say that? Come on. The shliach is saying, I was sent to receive it on her behalf. The husband says, Aviv, hoilichila. Why is that not enough to nullify the shliach lekabbalah? He's saying, hoilichila. The husband should be able to retract. Same thing, Vakasha Ad Rab Nosson. When he says hoylech, how does Rab Nosson know that hoylech means I am making you into a shliach halaylacha? Hoylech could also be understood in the other direction. It could be understood both ways. She sent a shliach like Kabbalah, and the man says hoylech. Maybe the man meant take it as she said. He didn't say not the way she said. Hoylech midibura. And the only answer is The answer is that the Rebbe holds with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds one doesn't have to befedish specify his intentions. The intentions could be deduced from the previous conversation. So holds the Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi oimer dayoy. So therefore, Rebbe holds that unless he clearly contradicted what he said from the previous, that we allow what happened prior to the present, we allowed the past to clearly inform the present. For the present to break from the past, there has to be a clear break. And Amnosan, on the other hand, agrees with Rabbi Yehuda. You can't allow for the get to go into effect based on the previous conversation. Even though the Shliach had gesagt, Shliach lekabbalah, the husband has to say, I agree with that. Now, when he's giving the get, he says, I agree to the Shliach. The very fact that he didn't say, I agree to that, the past does not inform the present. Beautiful. And look inside Marafulda, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. They don't have to read the whole thing. The Gemara, who cares? Like normally, many other sugyas in the Gemara, beautiful. So now we discovered that Rebbe holds with Rabbi Yossi. What do I care? And Abnasan holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Our Gemara has a problem. 4 lines in the bottom of the Kosher. Let Rab Chagai ho'ech pliget tanoim achroinim beplukte de tanoim harishoinim hamiforashim b'masnisen. That is Sfiralei Rebbe Rabbi Yossi. The way we're explaining, the most Rebbe should have done is have a loy lemeimar. I want you to know that I paskin like Rabbi Yossi, and v'chein Abnasan should have paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Not in the case in the Gittin. They should have said it over here. And b'derech mamela we would understand it from over there. So we have enough time. We have a minute. So says the Gemara, and now what's going to be beautiful, before we respond to the kasha, we're going to leave that for tomorrow. The Gemara is going to disentangle these 2 sugyas. But before we get there, Rab Chuna says, Daf Mem Aleph, I want you to know that we don't know who we paskin like. Whether we paskin like in the Braisa, like Rebbe, or like Rab Nasan. So what do you do, Aviv? The Shliach says, I was sent from the wife to be Makabal to get. Shliach lekabal. The man tells her, Hoylech. We don't know how to interpret it. Whenever a get is given, and we don't know whether she's already divorced, and then what does he do? Then he says, well, I want to retract. I'm not giving her a get. So the rule is, it's called a get nisafik. It's a unique din by Gittin. Megoreshes ve'ene megoreshes. So Nase, because of us, we don't know who the halach is like, the shliach becomes both, the chumras of both. We have to view him as shluchai. We have to view him as shlucha. Look inside the top of Marafulda. This is not. Ain't the teretz al kushas Rab Chagai. Ela mimra ba'api nafshehi. To Amar Rab Chuna. The mesap kelei Rab Chuna does not know. Ike Rebbe. Ule dibura ka Amar. Ike Rab Nasan ule diburi ka Amar. Mi am shliach leilacha. V'chol ka hay gavna. Dainin Allah the nasa shluchai v'shlucha. And v'kaim Allah the havalei safek migoreshes. And like Rabbi Isa says, Kulan de taninan shluchai v'shlucha. Whenever you learn in the laws of Gittin, shluchai v'shlucha, what does that mean? Migoreshes ve'ena migoreshes. Migoreshes l'chumra would mean that she can never marry a kohen. Let's say right now the husband dies. Now this man dies. She's for sure free to get married. Well, maybe she's a divorcee. Maybe she's a widow. A widow can marry a kohen. Migoreshes. On the other hand, if he doesn't die, she can't marry anyone else. Why not? Maybe ena migoreshes. We go to the chumra of both sides. But we're leaving, in other words, we are up to the kasha, which will have to be answered by showing us that these 2 arguments are not